Alright, Oscillions, today I will keep an elementary school slideshow, a project about very nerdy stuff, very basic stuff, but very nerdy stuff as well. It's gonna be all about numbers and in Oscilio, basically. Um, the value math is very important part, the floor part of Flesh and Blood, and I think it's a little bit different for Oscilio. Same concepts apply, but it's just a lot harder to see and manage, I think. Of course, there's decks that calculate probably in the very same way than Oscilio does, but you know, it's not so clear cut like you would be able with like Guardian or something, I think. So alright, let's get right into it. So first, I will just quickly go over like what is exactly value, so we can pick up everyone on the same page here. There's also many fantastic write-ups and videos about value in general and Flesh and Blood. Go check those if you want deeper dive. I'll just go quickly over it so we can continue on with the Oscillion things. So the value is a simple mathematical way of finding good ways to play your hands that are quote-unquote on rate or above rate or below rate to pilot the game in the best way possible. In a vacuum, in a sense. Of course, there's like a lot of contextual stuff for this, which cannot always be numbers. It's not only numbers game, but numbers do help a lot. So generally, your card is considered 3 points of value, and a random drawn or arsenal card is 3 extra value, right? However, not everything is functional, so we just ignore these for now. If you can't use a card, then it's not worth any value. So drawing is always with a little grain of salt, as you know, like pondering stuff. And yeah, so the basic design philosophy, I think, has been like power plus defense plus pitch minus the cost is like 7 or 8. That is usually the value of the card. Elemental, tags, talents, they also do have a value of 1, I think. But like this is not very important. Okay, the design philosophy, I just want you to be aware of this, right? And I will link this Simon Nielsen's recently written fantastic beginner's guide on Flesh and Blood, drafting the other formats, very good one, to the description. So why 3 value then? So here we have a random total legit hand that we would have in any deck, like same deck, yeah. So a 3 value comes from generally cards being 3 blocks or 3 pitch, or then you attack for 3 or 4, coming with the cost of something else, of course, if you have a higher values and the other things like defense reactions sink below, 4 value of blocking, also cycling, tucking card, sinking a card, X value, but cannot be used to attack. So here with this hand, we would have a nice 13 value, which is like slightly above right? Something 13 value is something we look after to play, and we are happy to play. So why is this 13 value? As you can see, we block with 3 cards, so that is 9, and 9 life saved, and we threaten 4 damage. Always calculate life saved and threaten damage. The other things do not matter as much. And if we do have less life than our opponent, then we can just block with Destructive Attitude and E-Strike and gain 6 life, and then Scar for Scar 4, go again, and Wounding Blue for 4. So then it would be at 14 value. And if we used E-Strike offensively, we would be at 12 or 13 value, because it's using Destructive Attitude, tucking it down, going 4 or 5, you know, calculate the rest. And Arcane is just less numbers than just an attack, because it's harder to defend, but don't need to do a deep dive on that more, I think. There's also things like conditional values that happen, for example, on hits, like CNC is an easy thing. You use 2 cards because you need to pitch 1 card for CNC, and it attacks for 6, so it's a 2-card 6. But that is like on raid, it's fine. But if it hits, it destroys opponent's arsenal, and then it's 2-card 9 because arsenal is like an average 3 value. It could be more, right? But like can't determine that. It's just a baseline. The next we have implied value, I think it's called. It's just, you know, drawing cards, getting cards to soul, like Bolton's cards eliminate. One hit goes to soul. Prism's soul worth like 4. Card draw for us, it depends. It can be 0. It can be it can be 10. Very hard to determine, but it is there. Very contextual. Now, my main point why I wanted to do this video is because blocking in Oscilio is better than attacking if you are about the same ballpark of value. I would rather, most of the time, in most matchups, block 3 than attack for 4. And the reason for that is the thing I let out and didn't say in my first slide, which was also written in Simon Nilsson's guide. Now blocking will the game go faster. Each player get to draw fewer hands in the game. And of course, then you suspect yourself to luck. You don't see as much of your deck. The other person high rolls, the other one does not, and there is less skill involved, and that is very apparent, especially in Oscilio. And I want to stress this, that we are not an aggro deck, although we are a deck that usually does not like to block with most of our hands. We'd rather use them on offense, but sometimes we just always we just want to prolong the game, and the way we would rather do it is to strip cards out of our opponent, like playing Mind War for 3. It is not doing exceptional value or damage unless it hits, and that is precisely why they have to give card out of their hand. So we preserve life by letting our opponent play less cards out of their hand, right? And the reason why we prolong the game is because we get more chances to combo. In my experience, if you get to use Greaves reasonably well once a game, we do not lose. It's actually very hard to lose. The win rate is just it is not 100, but it's quite close. So generally, for most success I have found is when the games last around 6+ turns. Then it starts to become like very consistent to hit like Greaves combos where you actually do need to think about your life not as a number, but more so as turns that you can no block, because when you draw your hand, it's when you want to combo, and if you're at like 5 to 10 life, you do need to block to survive, and then your combo is not as good. So then that you technically like lose offensive value, which is more than your defensive value, when you would want to convert to offense and take the tempo and hop on the driver's seat to put the game in your pocket or whatever the idiom you want to use it. Here it is. So you can just be like, oh, I'm at 25 life. This probably be like, I can just block a little this turn, and I still have one turn where when I draw my combo hand, I can just no block and go off, or use my armor block and go off, unless I get disrupted, of course. But this sort of perspective and philosophy I use myself. So 3 turns is way too fast. It gets super flippy. Of course, we can high roll and contest that. By turn 3, there's usually some sort of combo, but it is gets like very flippy. I don't like that. And my personal favorite play pattern is to is to block with 3 cards. So block for sorry, I'm still a little sick. Is to block for like a 7 to 10 value, and then we play Gun Flash from Arsenal, Sigil of Solace, or like any sigil from hand in resolution with 3 and 4 damage. we get the sigil, the benefits of the card, the instant, and we get to arsenal the Guardian Flash, which Guardian Flash in Arsenal is technically 4 value because it's guaranteed 4 attack, although not all turns it can be used. There's like turns where you don't have Embodiment of Lightning or Greaves up, Guardian Flash in Arsenal can get stuck there depending on your draws, of course. But like this would be 17 to 21 value, or like 18 to 21 value out of just 5 cards, and the additional benefits of maybe sigils for next turn. And you always want to start think of your next turn. That is very important. Here I drew a very beautiful graph for you. So you see the upper axis value, then we get the horizontal axis, and we get turn. So X and Y here. And blue is our graph, and the green is your most average mid-range deck in the history of mid-range. And yes, that does exist in some shape or form in Flesh and Blood, but we'll leave that talk to somewhere else. So here, if we are not blocking, we probably do die by turn 3 or so, because they threaten 40 to 50 value by that time, by turn 3 or 4. But if we block, and like we can see, we are not drawing our combo by then, right? But if we block and prolong the game, we see that there is always a spike coming. At some point of the game, you will almost always draw that hand that makes you go, oh, this is why I play the hero. So yeah, by this graph, a little bit over turn 5, we draw the hand, we win the game. And that is only made possible by blocking. Now the next, I'll go over the equipments. Greaves first. This is very little hard to determine its value, and I don't think it can be quantified like this sort of theory or feeling. But the earlier you can pop your boots, the more value you sort of get from them, because the follow-up turn is also like almost as devastating as the combo turn itself, because your opponent needs to block out the turn to survive, but then they have nothing to send back at you unless you heavily brick draw. You're usually setting up like some sort of sigil for next turn, and then you go off again. Then it's just the opponent is so low, and we are at the good life where you can just no block, and they have to block, because either they do die to Arcane or just breakpoints guaranteed, or shocks. That way they run 6 now. The best value of Greaves, I also want to stress, is to fix your hand. You do not want to intelligence penalty yourself for no reason if you can use Greaves to fix them. And I would say the general heuristic, this of course very much depends on the game, and you need to learn yourself what sort of value you're looking from Greaves depending on the game state and the matchup you're playing. But the general heuristic, I would say, is like 8. And Greaves are fantastic at taking up Falsar as well with Guardian Flash. So if you can make you hit the guaranteed surge of like Guardian Flash 2 instants and a Mind Warp or Etchings, fantastic stuff. I think that is just absolutely fantastic stuff. And then when the other equipments, Flash of Brilliance, I would highly recommend you not just use it for Sigil of Brilliance and to draw a card to set up a combo. Please also think of using it to fix your hand. You do not break, and you get embodiments from like conductivity. You get conductivity in your hand for like blast, stuff like that. And generally you can just calculate your hands, like you draw a hand that is like 4 blast to oblivions, right? Just block plus a brilliance, just get your embodiment back to your hand, and now you can just go with the embodiment of lightning and the embodiment of lightning. Just play out 2 of your things and pitch 1 away, and now your hand is, you can tarsal the last one, the hand is sort of like fixed. So now you gained like good value actually out of your hat. Bindings. A lot of people have problems with bindings. I don't personally understand why. 3 value from arms is already like considered, I think, good enough. You get 1 for life because you block with it, and then 1 or 2 for the amp. And now if your amp is guaranteeing a surge effect, then that is just additional value, and it gets like really fantastic with bindings. And usually a lot of times you can actually like do it. And also like using bindings on your quote-unquote off turns where you can just strip card out of your opponent for like little extra damage. It's very fantastic. Prolongs the game and achieves like everything you sort of want to achieve during your normal turns. Also, usually I've always been saying that spreading your sigils equally, Arsenaling sigils, is very good for consistency. But if you have determined that you are very heavy on arcane left on deck, there is a very valid strategy of just stacking your sigils for bindings and then shooting a big spell. Also, remember that as well as the other equipments are very good at covering on hits, because a lot of the times your hand might block 4 or 5 of 2 cards. Your equipment is sort of bring lightning cards 2 times or 3 times to, or 4 times to 3 block, and that is like very fine. Flash of Brilliance there as well. Just don't get randomly hit by devastating Command and Conquer, just to hope to draw a Sigil of Brilliance that you can use with Flash of Brilliance, and yeah, lose the game by that. Now, here's a Discord user, Dacm, the Blast Up user. He made a big math thing out of like card counting on Oscilio, because there was a card counting rule for Kano with blues versus reds, but he had to add a 3rd component here as well. So now there's like just pause here. This is a little hard, a lot of information, hard to look at. I'll try to explain it to you. So if you look at the white spreadsheet, you see turn 1 count set 0 3 0, and what that means is that the first number, the 0, is auras versus non-aura instance, and his deck runs 15 aura instance and 15 non-aura instance. So you're at 0, they are equal. If it's plus, it means that you will more likely draw a non-aura instant, because there is more of them left in their deck. The next number 3 is attack versus spells, and he is running 18 attacks and 12 spells. I believe he did take away from the count the cyclable Comet Storm spell, so that's why it's like this. Oh no, actually, sorry, it is the Null Shock that's bringing to 18 and 15. So more attacks and more volts are things remain on this second thing. So now I start the game at +3. So if we draw, say, 3 attacks, now it becomes 0. And if we draw 3 more attacks, now it's more likely to draw a spell than an attack out of our deck. And the last thing is instance and non-instance. So they are being at equal 30-30. That's why the 0. So then we see our random hand at first turn draws a non-aura instance 2 of them, spells 2 of them. We update the count state by that into -2, 0, 1 and 0. And now you see like the percentage change in our favor of drawing aura instant and attack versus spell. And of course you don't need to know these exact numbers when you're playing the game. It's just a very good fundamental to keep in your mind, card counting, how many instants, how many attacks, how many spells you have drawn out of your deck, to sort of have an idea what cards you are getting most likely out of your deck next turn as well. And like very idiotic example is that if you have drawn 3 etchings out of your deck, now you don't draw etchings anymore. So that's very relevant information for your game plan that you are trying to like construct for the coming turns. Can't play Oscilio just turn by turn really. And here just very extreme examples. If you draw 10 instance cards that like instance like flittering, not that valuable in hand. You don't want to arsenal them. You'd rather play the card out than arsenal and get stuck there. Stuff like that. If you're drawing like 10 attacks, you probably like drawing, if you're having Guiding Flash in arsenal, probably drawing instance and a spell. Very good to look for a combo. Or play towards your arcane payoffs if your opponent has an equipment suit that does not block AP well, like Ira. If you have drawn like 10 arcane spells, then just, you know, Sigil of Aether, not very good card then. You want to utilize the other cards out of your deck. All these things that you think, they are some percentage and will matter in the long run and lead to better solution, determining what you should like arsenal or should you play. Should you play Sigil of Brilliance now or Arsenal it, or play Lightning, Sigil of Lightning now or Arsenal it, or play both? Or do you play the flittering? Do you pitch the flittering to keep the channel Lightning Value around? Do you Arsenal the flittering? All these you can make educated guesses what is left in your deck. Like here I've said, in case of likely drawing multiple attacks, you would rather have Embodiment Lightning than draw a random card off of Brilliance. And also I think that after your hand has like 5 to 6 cards, probably like 6 cards I would use as a good number here, the Embodiment of Lightning gets more valuable, and I will later show you why. Each of these sides of Oscilio creates powerfuls and also breaking combinations, and like, yeah, you have to keep everything in mind. If you have not seen your gun like for 5 turns and you don't have the Embodiment of Lightning, it's probably like, for example, best interest to play it instead of arsenal it back. So you get guaranteed values out of your cards, and you know you're not breaking for the next turns. Now, card advantage. This is not a thing that generally is very relevant in Flesh and Blood in the same sense that it would be like, for example, Magic the Gathering. But in Oscilio, that's what basically his ability is. You just look to fix your hand to find better cards that do more and more value than your opponents, and are better for those game situations and game states. And also you have to keep in mind the card count, what you can draw into. Will you break your hand if you cycle this electromagnetic somersault now, or do you rather the discharge cycle that out if you're trying like slithering charge? There's always a risk reward. Also against like fatigue, if you know you're playing against CYP deck, you do not want to like use Oscilio too much, because you want to get max value out of each of your card. You don't want to burn through your deck super fast unless you know you have a good enough pitch deck. For example, timing is everything with this ability, and I can't stress it enough. For example, if you have 6 block in your hand, say Funnel and a Comet Storm, and you are playing a deck that can play Command and Conquer, and the lists usually do play that, you don't want to first thing in your hand like, look, oh, I can't use this Comet Storm, I already have red etchings in my hand, so I'll just cycle it first thing when my opponent does something. And then at the end of the chain, you have 3 block left in your hand, but better offensive hand, but there's a CNC, and now you're just doomed. So it's very obvious example, but using at the best times possible to look for cards that might solve the situation for better in your way is always at your best interest. Also, you want to look for cards that are good in the equipment setup your opponent's playing with. Like for example, Ira, you want to use Mind Warps. Zen, you want to use Mind Warps. Then you have like Guardian that is 3 null runes. You probably want to just attack breakpoints, right? unless they are victor and they're catching gold from this, but you get the idea. Then you also have like silver bullet cards, like scours that you want to look into this rare matchup, and brilliance and gun flash always cards you want to dig for. So keep in mind the speed that you want to actively go fast, right, in those type of scenarios, or go slow. Now this is a little handheld research I did about Embodiment of Lightning, because I was sort of interested what type of ballpark would the value of Embodiment of Lightning land into. And here are my rules. So I ran 50 example hands. I just went to February, click draw 4, first half of the deck, no setup taken into account, only 4 cards, no arsenal. Cycling not taken into account because I can't drop 1 card, draw 1 card. Helping to fix the IP penalty, also ignored, just pure damage threatened, health gained. No setups for blast from earlier turns if you had sigils, not taken into account. And no search values calculated, also wolves are not counted unless I have exactly usable spell in hand. And blocking also taken into account. So if blocking was more value out of my hand, then get Embodiment of Lightning. Offense, 0 value, right? And this is just the last 20 I screenshotted here, and the total average was 2.76. And bear in mind that 4 cards versus 5 cards, it is a very big difference in Oscilio. It's not just a random 3 or 4 value. It is a lot of more chances than get linker cards to not break, and there's a billion of scenarios why it is like additive damage for as fools are yada yada yada. But like here, a nice number for it. 2.76 is like almost a random draw, right? It sounds like brilliance. This is here the reason why I say Embodiment of Lightning. It's better to have Embodiment of Lightning, or sorry, Sigil of Lightning and Sigil of Brilliance than 2 to 3 Sigil of Brilliances. Because now you just draw random cards, most likely will not grant you a lot of value after a certain point. Now here's an example hand with Embodiment of Lightning and without. Now without Embodiment of Lightning, we'd probably get like 8 value and draw a card randomly out of Channel Lightning Valley that we maybe like could not use. And then the other scenario is with Embodiment of Lightning, we just play Ganon Flash, Channel Lightning Valley in resolution, don't care about the draw. Pitch Conductivity to keep the valley around, shoot Comet Storm for 7 damage, keep the valley around, get 4 value for Oscillion Ganon Flash. Good stuff, right? So this is what I calculated for a lot of these type of hands, right? 50 of them. So yeah. And Oscilio value, usually damage is calculated turn by turn, but in Oscilio you have a plethora of these hard questions, very min-maxing questions every round that, or every turn by turn, that get like very punishing if you decide wrong. You have auras, like I said, they're swing flirting for 4, they're arsenaling, they're pitch it also to keep the Channel Lightning Valley around. A lot of the value in Oscilio is hidden or implied, and like comes down to just card counting. What are the possibilities, and like what type of hands will your next hand and the deck construction lead into? Very important stuff. Therefore, I think it's just better to calculate the value like by turn, or like even 3 to 4 turns to get like more reasonable idea of like what do we get out of our auras. Since the turns they are played, they probably just grant you go again, which is like very big, or like buff walls are, but numerically those are like 1 or 2 value, right? But next turn you get the real effects. Now Arsenaling Oscilio is actually an interesting thing. I have a calculation of this later. So the gap, as I said, between 4 and 5 cards is big. We have Creeves, that kind of flash or blast shenanigans get like exponentially more exploding. We have funnel. That is not a very good card if you have just 4 cards in your hand. Probably can't use the go again to fullest, so you'd rather block 3. But if you get 5 to 6 cards with funnel in your hand, now suddenly your hand is like an actual Greaves turn without using Greaves, because it grants you a lot of like action points that we need to in the form of go-agains. For example, Arsenal Ganon Flash, played it, blink, get that back to hand. Now your funnel is active, you go funnel. Now you go Ganon Flash, another instant, you get Ganon Flash, another instant. Or like spell instead of lasting. Very good stuff. And you also get higher chances of combination of cards that links your hand together, and also more circleable targets, so it is harder to break. And Gun is just worth 4 points in value in Arsenal usually, because it's a 0 for 4 attack. Sigil is very hard to determine, but they actually do bring the percentage a lot down. I will show you later, if you Arsenal them and like spread them out evenly. Now here is the interesting thing, a brick math. You can see top right corner, you get the formula here. And I've explained that the N value is your total cards, smaller minor N hand size, bigger K is non-attack actions, and the 3 and 4 smaller K is for the numbers that we, if we draw them, like if you have two of the non-attack actions in our hand, that I would consider a brick hand. So the first case X, the cases where hand has more than 2 non-attack actions in the first 4 cards, right? This first 4 cards, it is 1.73 about percent. Now the case Y is for no instance in hand, because that usually actually just always breaks our hand, right? And for that to happen, it is 4.20%. The case Z, all the cards are same category, so you have like 4 attacks, 4 instances also calculated here, and also just 4 spells, so that is about 8.44%. Now the case L, the fourth case, is that you have the exact same copies of the cards, like 3 Ganon Flashes in your hand, or 3 Blasts in your hand. These can also, like 3 Blasts can unbreak, but just put it there as a one scenario, and that is very small percentage of about 0.01%. Now the combined break value of our hand on the first 4 cards is about 12.37%. Blocking is not taken into account, okay? And finally, the turns 2 and 3 is mathematically the least chances to break. And if I remember this correctly, by turn 2, your break chance is 11.5%, turn 3, 11.4%. And after that, you get back to about 12.5%. And then it shoots up to 14%, 18%, so on and so forth. We're a little bit like by turn 8, I believe it was, you have like 100% chance to break, right? But of course we get to make a lot of choices and are selling cards before that. So I made a calculation, is that if you can always have an arsenal instant, say a sigil, in your arsenal, your hand that you can break is about 4.2%. It's very, very much lower chance than if you do an arsenal instant. Now, of course, if you arsenal Ganon Flashes and you get the block with your cards, you also like don't break as often. But just a ballpark of percentages numbers here, which you might want to keep in mind. I think this is a fun little experiment. These are all averages. My formulas could be wrong. They could be a lot more cases also where you have like chances to break, right? but this function is just a hyperbolic time chamber math, hypergeometric calculations, right? And lastly, I do want to thank my lovely patrons. See their numbers there, too many numbers. Sorry, names there. Thank you very much. But yeah, I hope this was of any help for you. I think that just doing this was a little eye-opener for me as well, because I got to like really crunch the numbers and see the values. So the point of this video was to teach you how to value the things turn by ternally in Oscilio. Do I embodiment of lightning? Do I draw a random card? Do I arsenal this? Do I play this? Do I not arsenal that? All that good stuff. Hope it was answered in these videos. And if you disagree or want to educate me, by all means leave a comment. I will have a discussion. But yeah, I hope you have a fantastic day.